Well, hello. My name is Anthony Sicaro, founder and president of Providence Financial and Insurance Services, located in the heart of the San Fernando Valley in Woodland Hills, California. I'm also an estate planning attorney and for 5 years running was host of the Providence Financial Retirement Show, which aired every Saturday at 4 o'clock p.m. on AM 870. KRL lays the answer. And periodically, I like to do these market updates and give you my thoughts and insight with regards to the markets and economic conditions and how it affects you, my clients. And so this video is primarily for my clients. If you are a client of mine, thank you for watching. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for your business. I don't take it lightly. If you're not a client of mine and you have any questions about anything that we talk about, feel free to contact us. And probably the best way to do that is right through our website at providencefinancialinc.com. So I want to do something a little bit different in this video. I want to take a few minutes and just talk about some of the conversations that I've had with Dave Scranton and the Sound Income Strategies. This is the firm that is managing your money if in fact you are with TD Ameritrade. And that's true for probably 95% of you. That if you're with TD Ameritrade, then Sound Income Strategies is the company behind the scenes that's doing all the research, the analysis, and making all the decisions with inside your portfolio, as you well know, because we've had this conversation before. So it's important to understand Sound Income Strategies and who they are, and I get a great comfort and great peace of mind in the analysis that they're doing. And I want to just take and pass some of that on to you so you can have just a better idea as to what they're doing behind the scenes. Some people will ask, this is a question we get frequently, is how safe is my money? What's happening? Are there people behind the scenes that are just looking at price? It goes up and they buy, it goes, or they sell and it goes down and they buy. Is that pretty much all they're doing? Or is there more to it than that? And I'm going to tell you that there is a lot more to it than that. So I want to just give you an idea of how much more to it there is. A few weeks ago, maybe even a month ago or so, I put out a video where we talked about the cash burn, and I hinted at a lot of this stuff. We talked about SIS a little bit at that point, but I'm going to get into more detail in this video here. Now, Dave Scranton, the owner of Sound Income Strategies, is someone that you should know. He's considered a public figure. He's been interviewed by I don't know how many dozens of outlets, media channels, radio shows, live TV, and he has his own show called The Income Generation on Newsmax that airs every Saturday at 10 o'clock a.m. I'm sorry, it's 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. It's actually 7 o'clock a.m. our time. So if you have Newsmax, then feel free to get up and watch the show. I think it'd be very, very valuable. But Dave Scranton, in his show, just this last week, emailed Dr. Ben Carson. And that is going to air not this Sunday, but it's going to air the following Sunday at 7 o'clock a.m. And they talked a little bit about the primary concern with this coronavirus, and what can happen is the fact that when things start to open up again and states start to open up again, we're not going to go back to a new normal. It's not going to be normal. There's going to be masks. There's going to be social distancing. The biggest concern that Dr. Ben Carson had is the fact that when we do open up, people don't take it seriously. And if people don't take it seriously, then we could have a round 2 of this epidemic. And of course, that would cause things to shut down again. The government has said that they're very willing and ready to shut down again if they have to. Of course, that wouldn't be good for you. That wouldn't be good for us. That wouldn't be good for anybody, another shutdown. So we want to avoid that. So if you want to watch that entire interview, that's going to be on Newsmax. You got to find out where that is on whatever channel you have. On some of you, I don't know if you can all get it. But it's 7 o'clock a.m. Pacific time, a week from Sunday. I'm recording this on Friday, April 8th. So Sunday's April 10th. So a week from Sunday would then, I guess, according to May 8th, right? I'm a month behind. May 8th, I'm recording this. May 10th is going to be Sunday. May 17th would be the date that you could watch that interview, the full interview with Dr. Ben Carson. But with that in mind, I want to take you through some analysis that Sound Income Strategies has done with regards to even some specific holdings. And part of this, matter of fact, a lot of this is because you've asked me some questions that have led up to me recording this video. One of the common questions we get is one of you might call me and say something like, well, Anthony, we have half our money in the stock market with TD Ameritrade, with you. And so, we thought we didn't have any money in the stock market, or we thought that we were going to have minimal exposure. And so we're kind of confused. Well, I understand that. And it's easy to be confused because how we classify investments is a little bit different than how TD Ameritrade classifies investments. The reality is that TD Ameritrade just takes a bunch of things and throws them into the stock category. They take potentially the bond ETFs. They take your business development companies. They take your preferred stocks and they call them all stock. And yes, while preferred stock even has the name stock in it, it's not common stock. It's a different class of stock. It works differently. So the reality is that TD Ameritrade lumps these categories together and they call them all stock. They put kind of everyone in the same category. And it's just very, very confusing. But the reality is that 70% or so of every one of your portfolios, or at least 99% of your portfolios, is in stuff that has a par value associated with it. And as we talked about in the video a month and a half ago, par value should give you a great peace of mind, because as the portfolio fluctuates up and down, that investments with a par value at some point down the road are guaranteed to give you the value back. So it's kind of like a safety net in case there's a wild pitch. So the reality is regardless of the fluctuation of your portfolio, that income, that interest and dividends is going to keep coming in, and 70% of everything that's in your portfolio has a par value. So really, if your portfolio fluctuates up, it really doesn't affect you. If it fluctuates down, it really doesn't affect you because of this par value. Now, maybe 25 or 30 or 35% of the other investments inside your portfolio don't have a par value, like your BDCs don't have a par value, but the underlying investments do. ETFs, exchange traded funds. We use ETFs for bonds for a small percentage of your portfolio, maybe 10 or 15% or so. They don't have a par value, ETFs, but the underlying bonds inside the ETFs have a par value. So just about everything in your portfolios either has a par value directly, or the underlying investments have some kind of a par value. And that just makes it more conservative than common stock. Common stock, there is no par value, and that's a significant difference. So it's easy to be confused by looking at your statement and realizing that, oh my gosh, there's a whole bunch of stock and we're worried for the next shoe to drop and maybe we should get out. No, I think that's the wrong way to look at it. So hopefully that is just a quick reminder of par value, but you can watch the video that I did a few weeks ago if you want to get more ideas to what par value is. But what I want to do at this point is I want to jump into some of the specific holdings that you have and talk about the cash burn analysis that we did a few weeks ago, and that really Sound Income Strategies is doing every single day. Sound Income Strategies is a growing company, just like we are continuing to grow. As of, I think, next week, I think they're going to have either 5 or 6 full-time senior analysts that are there looking at the investments, doing all the analysis, wanting to do everything they can to make sure that your portfolios are as safe as possible. And I want to spend a few minutes and talk about that as well. What are some particular holdings that they were concerned about? Now, just for clarification, I think you know this already, but for clarification, what we're talking about now is the investments inside TD Ameritrade. That's what we're talking about. A lot of you have annuities in your portfolios, and the annuities are the insured investments. And you often hear me talk about insured investments, which I often categorize as conservative, and then the uninsured investments, which I categorize as moderate. So your insured investments, which is your annuities primarily, that's all safe. That's all insured. You don't have to worry about that. So we're not talking about that. We're talking specifically about the uninsured investments. And everything that is really in TD Ameritrade. And I've had a lot of good conversations with you recently based on my past videos. Every conversation is one-on-one. I'm not making a blanket recommendation because everyone's different. Everyone's emotional feelings are different. So I've had some conversations with you where market's down now really 10 to 15% at this point, just depending on what measure you look at. And some people, I'm going to say most of the conversations I've had have been people have felt like they've gotten most of their money back. They're waiting for another shoe to drop. And so maybe it's time to take the winnings off the table. Even though you're not at the high point, let's take some of the winnings off the table and let's reinvest in the more moderate and conservative category. That's probably been the bulk of my conversations with you. But I've had some other people that think that the market's that everything's going to end soon, and they want to invest their money. I disagree with that, but it's your money, and so that's where we have conversation. But we've had some people that want to get in the stock market now, and so we've had those conversations. But the reality is that regardless of what camp you're in, whether you want to take some of your chips off the table, or whether you want to put some chips on the table, that's one-on-one conversation. So call me and continue to call me and ask me questions. But throughout these conversations are the questions I'm getting, which I'm answering now. And a lot of you guys have asked me, about these uninsured investments, especially for people that want to take chips off the table and they want to get into the more uninsured investments. They want to know about them. So that's why I'm having this conversation with you. So I want to give you a little bit of analysis with regards to sound income strategies and some of the things they're doing. Now, cash burn, what they did, just to recap what I talked about over a month ago, is their normal protocol, okay, is that they will generally analyze two investments a day. And you got, different analysts doing different things, but they will thoroughly analyze two investments a day. And they only have 100, 125 investments that they typically work with on a particular basis because they've weeded out everything else. So it takes them about 90 days, 60 to 90 days to really go through two investments a day, as far as their analysis. Well, when all of this started happening with COVID, what they did is they analyzed all 100 investments within 3 days. And they powered through it. And then by the time that 3 days was end, things happened so fast at the beginning of this virus that by the time 3 days was up, everything had changed. They had to go back and do it again. And that's what they've been doing. And what they're looking at primarily is cash burn. They want to know if a company lost revenue and had zero revenue, how long could that company go with the cash that they have and not have to worry about paying the debt on their interest, the bonds. That's what they wanted to know. And so they continue to do that analysis, and we got an update from them, and I wanted to take and pass that update on to you. So I'm going to refer to my notes here, so I've got some good numbers. The first company that we talked about was Dell. Now, at first glance, okay, Dell has only 3 months worth of cash reserves, cash burn, which means they could lose all their revenue, and for 3 months they could pay their bills before they would worry about defaulting on their debt. But Dell would have to lose 3/4 of their revenue in order for that to happen. Okay, in order for them not to be able to cover their debt, they'd have to lose 3/4 of their revenue. So on 25% of Dell's revenue, they can pay all of their debt. So then you want to take a look at how is coronavirus affecting Dell? Well, probably you've come to the conclusion that Dell is going to be benefiting from this dramatically, right? With everybody working at home, all the companies buying computers. I had to buy new computers for my staff. I could barely find any. As a matter of fact, I needed one pronto, and I couldn't find one. I had to go to Costco because I needed it the same day, and I had to buy a very expensive Mac, and I like Mac, but it wasn't what I was planning on buying, but I needed one. So you can't hardly get computers. So the fact is that Dell is in a situation where the demand for their computers is high. So there's really no concern there. Plus, they're a big company. They've got access to the capital markets. So there's really no concern. But if you just look at 3 months of cash burn up front, then that's, then that could be deceiving. Another company, Best Buy, same kind of situation. When they analyze uh, Best Buy only has 4 months of cash burn. 4 months in the retail industry? Are you kidding me? I mean, that's probably the place to run away from, right? Well, that would be at first glance, but there's more. Because it turns out that Dell doesn't have a ton of debt. Their earnings would have to drop by 97% for them not to be able to pay their debt. Okay. Plus, they have enough assets to offset any of the debt that they have right now. So if they were to declare bankruptcy, then there's enough assets they could sell everything off and pay all their bondholders. So, as a matter of fact, they couldn't even declare bankruptcy because of that reason. So the fact is that they would have to lose 90% of their revenue for their bonds not to get paid. So it's really one of the safer holdings in there because they got the assets to back it. They can pay all the debt. So another company, Seagate. Seagate is a technological company. Okay, they have 1 year and 8 months of cash. So really no concern about Seagate. And again, with computer sales and so on, there might actually be a demand for these components. So no concern about Seagate, but just kind of giving you an example. Midstream Partners and Murphy Oil, two oil companies. A lot of people are worried about oil. And you've seen a lot of the oil stuff in your portfolios go down, the oil bonds especially. Well, Midstream Partners has 3 years of cash burn. That means that they could have no revenue and they could not reduce expenses at all, and they can go for 3 years. And we know the coronavirus is going to last a while. It's not going to last 3 years. And if things change, then we can always get out of it at some point down the road later. Murphy Oil, same thing. 2 years. Okay, Murphy Oil, without cutting any expenses at all, and and if they lost all their revenue, then they can go 2 years. They have enough cash to be able to do that. So the reality is not worried about Murphy, not worried about Midstream Partners, but they've come down. You've seen these bonds come down quite a bit in your portfolio. And of course, these companies can cut back expenses. These companies can, they are getting some revenue as well too. So kind of looking at worst case scenario. Avis Rent-A-Car, the last one I think that we'll just touch on. Avis Rent-A-Car bonds are down. Bonds went down on the fact that there's talk about Hertz going bankrupt. But right now they have over a year's worth of cash burn. And yet there are a lot of things that Avis can do to shore their situation up. They can, if they need to sell used cars, right? They can get rid of some of their inventory, sell the cars. They can cancel contracts with GM and Ford for the cars that they were going to buy. Now, that's a good example of how it's going to go upward. We're worried about the rental industry in general, not Avis, Hertz. That's why we don't own Hertz. They did the cash burn analysis with Hertz and don't own that because there's a concern that there's talk of them going bankrupt. But they don't own Hertz. That would be sound income strategies. So Avis can do some things, cancel contracts, but then that's going to affect GM and that's going to affect Ford. So that's an example of how one industry affects a different industry. The rental industry affecting the manufacturing industry. So I really wanted to take a few minutes and just give you my thoughts, give you the analysis that we've done. Your portfolios are being actively managed. Your portfolios are very conservative. And yet it could be easy to look at TD Ameritrade and say, well, what is Anthony doing? He has me half in stock. And here we talk about stocks and, the fact that I think there's another shoe to drop. And yet, Anthony has me half in stocks according to TD Ameritrade. So I wanted to clarify that, let you know that behind the scenes, Sound Income Strategies is in fact doing a ton of analysis. Matter of fact, with regards to the BDCs, I think I'll talk about this too, because inside your portfolio, one of the areas that got hit the hardest are business development companies. And BDCs are much more opaque than bonds and preferred stocks, where you can read the reports and read other analysts' opinions. BDCs are a retail product. They're not generally invested in by large institutions. They're not institutional. And so retail investors tend to panic. So they tend to come down a lot more than everything else because the institutional investors aren't panicking. And so you've seen a lot of your BDCs come down, but I don't think at this point, I don't think you have more than 15%. I don't think any one of you have more than 15% of your portfolio in BDCs, and they've got a high yield, but that price is going to fluctuate. And so what Sound Income Strategies has done is they have actually got on the calls with BDCs, onto earnings reports calls, and they've actually listened to the reports right out of the CFO's mouth, hot off the press. You can't get as much information about BDCs as you can about other publicly traded companies and so on, for the reasons that we talked about. They're just more opaque. And there's probably 50 or 60 BDCs out there. When Sound Income Strategies did their analysis, they really boiled it down to the safest of the safe. There's only a half a dozen or so BDCs that they work with. And they've already done 3 calls with these BDCs. I think next week, I think they got the other 3. And really, none of the BDCs are concerned. Very few of the companies that are inside the BDCs that the BDCs have loaned money to have quit paying. Most of the companies are very solid. There's not anyone in there that's really worried. So I would expect that we're going to see a bounce back on the price of the BDCs, and hopefully the news will, be the same with the next 3 calls that they do next week as well too. So they are doing the analysis, making sure that the portfolio investments are as safe as they can be as well. So with that said, I still want to throw in my 2 cents about where we think the market is likely to go. Okay. This is not uncommon for the market to drop by 30 or 40%. The market actually got down to 40% at its low point, and now has bounced back to where it's only down about 15%, the S&P 500. Okay. That's not uncommon in a typical cycle like this. As a matter of fact, that's more common than not. The market never drops like a rock in the ocean. The market always drops like a feather, right? Where it just kind of catches a wave and hangs around there for a while, and then we'll bounce up for a little while, kind of catch an updraft, and then we'll go down. But the general trend is down, and oftentimes it takes a year to 2, maybe even 3 in some situations, for the market to hit bottom. And we hope that this entire situation is quick. We hope it ends quick. We hope that the government response is sufficient. I personally don't think it will be. And the question is this going to be? Is it going to in 2 to 3 years or maybe 4 years? Are we going to have recovered from this, or is this going to be a 10-year long scenario? And that's what we don't really know. As a matter of fact, though, some of you know that I have written a book. Okay, and that book is scheduled to be published. I believe it was August 8th. And the book has to do with what you don't know about retirement. And when that book comes out, I'm going to ask all of you all to buy it, because there are probably going to be some things in there that we've talked about that maybe are going to come to the forefront of your mind that are going to rekindle conversation. But with absolutely no bias at all, I think it's going to be the best book written about finances. I got to tell you, I'm very happy about it. But the reason I mention that is because of the fact that I just got permission from the publisher yesterday to write a 12th chapter about COVID. And my mom came up with the title, so I've got to give mom's credit. Mom came up with the title. The moment I told her about this, she goes, "Well, yeah, why don't you call it the foretaste of the aftermath?" And I go, "That's a great title." Because that's exactly what it's going to be. It's not going to be about what you know so far about COVID. I'm going to spend a little time talking about COVID. I'm going to spend a little time talking about, in that chapter, talking about the immediate economic effect that we've had and why some of the things have happened over the last 2 months. But the focus of the chapter is going to be in the future. What are we going to expect to happen in the future? Now, when you're this far along in a book and you've got a publish date, they don't let you go back and write another chapter. So here I am publishing a book that in the middle of a COVID epidemic that's going to come out in August and saying nothing about COVID, and that was unacceptable. So apparently they think it's valuable enough, and I appreciate working with the publisher on that. So I got a week to write this chapter about COVID. So in there, I'm going to talk about the aftermath of what we think is likely to happen. So I'm going to let you buy the book to read it when it comes out in August, but I think the aftermath is going to be ugly. I think that there's going to be another major shoe to drop. I think we're absolutely going to test the market lows of 18,000 that the Dow Jones saw in March. And I think the Dow Jones could even go below 15,000. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. There's a lot of reasons why that could happen. It could be a resurgence of the virus. It could be another virus that spins off of this virus. So many reasons why that could happen. But the reality is that I think it's very possible. And if you, again, watching this video, or maybe on the fence about should you take some chips off the table, you've got most of your money back, or you've gotten a good chunk of your money back. Maybe it is time to take some chips off the table and to get some of that money out of the stock market and put it in the uninsured or even the insured category. If that's your thought, give me a call. We'll have a one-on-one conversation about it. Schedule a quick 15-minute call with my office. I'd love to talk to you. But that's it for this video. Hopefully it's helped. And if you have any questions, as always, you know how to get a hold of me. Please feel free to contact us. Thank you for watching.